And good evening. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, but we want to be live on Facebook as well. So we're going to bring in those streams, make sure we've got everybody under the roof on this holiday weekend. So we got to let it breathe in the gunpowder and fireworks smoke that's surrounding my neighborhood, at least, as we open up this chat. And welcome in, everybody. This is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your guest host tonight, Scott Kennedy. You can find me at Scout Kennedy, I think it says right over here somewhere. You might know me from Broncos for Breakfast, but you definitely know this guy over on this side, Zack Kelberman, who is a mainstay. They call him one of the priests. I've kind of picked up the nickname the Deacon for being around here, and I appreciate that. But Zack, how is your holiday weekend going so far?
It's been pretty good, a little hectic, but that's, what Memorial Day weekend entails. And Scott, I wouldn't downplay yourself by calling yourself a guest host. You have graduated well beyond that. You are the deacon for a reason. Never forget that.
Well, I never like to, I'm not good with compliments, which is strange because, I'm insecure, so I like them. Flattery works wonders on me. So I never like to assume, I don't want to be presumptuous in here. So, I'm usually in the background tonight, but I get to say hello to a lot of people that I might not normally see and get to say hello to and thank in the mornings who can't always make it, like David McElrath coming in nice and early. David was in about 45 minutes ago, Zach. When we thought we were going live. Sorry, we were a little late tonight, but we'll try and make it up to you. We appreciate you being patient. And David says, good evening, Broncos country. Chad's out there somewhere. Zach, Dylan, and Deacon Scott, remember tomorrow, all gave some and some gave all. MHH for life, Buckham ×2, Denbro's Broncos for life. If you're my age, your granddads were probably in World War II, and your dad and a lot of his friends had a pretty good chance of going in Vietnam. Luckily, Gen Xers and beyond haven't really known a draft, and we're thankful for that, for everything that you were able to do. So thank you, David, for not only supporting this show, but reminding us what tomorrow is all about.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's watched the show knows I am so thankful for anyone who served our country. I'm literally wearing like a patriotic wristband. I'm a proud patriot, Scott, and it's a great day to remember all that, those who sacrificed.
Yes, both. I had one granddad in Europe and one in on the Pacific side. He was in the Navy, so may they both rest in peace.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for their service and helping us get to where we were. Helping us do what we do every night is Dylan Von Arks. He says, "Sup Broncos country, make sure you hit that like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already." Zach, I don't know if it's kind of cool. You listen to a lot of the shows. I don't know that everybody always cross-references because you're like, oh, yeah, you mentioned something you might have said. I'm like, hey, Zach actually listened. That's kind of cool.
I'm a company man.
But we broke 19,000 subscribers on YouTube either last week or the week before, and I'm looking forward to hitting that 20. And I said I'm going to talk Chad into doing some sort of giveaway. We're going to do something when we hit 20,000. So get your friends, email people, say, hey, subscribe to this show. If there's only about 4 million Broncos fans out there, we need to find some more of them, making sure that they're finding us. So anything you do, like Dylan just said here, helps us do that for sure. The topic of the show tonight, we can get into it here pretty quick. I was actually surprised. I like to peruse some of the aggregators out there that just, Bleacher Report's one of them. There's some new ones out there. Sports Spider, Fan Recap does it too. And like 6 of the 7 first articles were about Russell Wilson's weight or lack thereof, should I say. So Zach, what's going on with Russell Wilson?
It's something, Scott, you've been in the background of most of the podcasts. I'm sure you've talked about it as well. Throughout the offseason, we've noticed a physical, visible change in Russ. And last year, not to body shame anyone, he looked a little pudgy. He looked like he was carrying a little more than he had to, and it was affecting his play and also probably his mindset. We talked about the psychological and mental impacts of the trade from Seattle to Denver, and I think that went along with it. And it seems ever since the Sean Payton hire was official and Payton's come into the building, Russ has slim down. That's the buzzword around Russ now is the slim down Russell Wilson. He has a whole new mental outlook. He says he wants to be the best player I can be. He's totally motivated, Scott, physically, psychologically, mentally, every which way to be the quarterback the Broncos envisioned when they made that trade and they paid him that money.
If it was a conscious effort to put on some extra weight, some extra muscle, or, to bulk up a little bit, why do you think he would have done that? And why might it not have worked, among other things that went wrong last year?
Listen, we all went through breakups in our lives, and typically when you go through a breakup, you really don't care too much about yourself. You kind of let things go. And I'm not saying he was eating pints of Ben and Jerry's every night, but it seemed like, yeah, like us mortals. But it's just a subconscious thing, or M&M's, doesn't really matter. Maybe Russ has his own vice. We don't know that. I think he just, all of it got to him a little bit. The trade, the fans turning on him, his former coaches turning on him, the national media lampooning him at every turn. And it just kind of happened. But he realized he was bad last year. He realized it could be his final chance this season under a new coach who has no investment. You've talked about that a lot on your podcast, Scott. So he knows he's maybe fighting for his job, and he has to be, like he said, the best player he could be.
I'm gonna go a different direction and say maybe it was a conscious effort to put on some weight because maybe I want to be more of a pocket passer. Maybe I don't want to get out, and maybe I need to have a little bit extra bulk
Woke up, yeah.
and size in order to absorb more of those hits. However, that's not what has made Russell Wilson through his 10-plus year career, 9 Pro Bowls included. What has made him so good is his ability to improvise. You know, he's been good as a quarterback. He's been great on improvising plays and moving on the run. And when you're in your mid-30s and you're carrying a little bit extra weight, I promise you, you don't move as well as you did when you were 25 and 20 pounds lighter. I think Harold may have said here, right here in the chat, he says probably the only meaning behind Russell Wilson's weight loss is the ungodly amount of play actions we'll be running this season. Play action bootlegs, moving on the run, and having that escapability that I think eluded him. He was used to being able, Zach, we'd see him tuck and spin and disappear out the back door.
Yep.
That wasn't happening last year, and it only takes a fraction of a second difference, and 20 pounds can do that for you, Zach.
You might be right. Harold might be right. I see someone posted a picture of last year around this time and the Russell Wilson of this year. And it just is stunning how much weight he's lost, at least in his face. And you might be right about bulking up, or you might be right about taking those hits, but he also probably failed the mirror test, and he's a human like everybody else. Maybe he looked in the mirror at some point in the last couple months and said, hey, I'm not the guy that I was a few years ago. I want to go back to looking like that. Maybe a combination of both, but you might be onto something.
I don't know about you, but 30 was a turning point for me when it came to weight. As a soccer player, well into my 30s, I'd come home and eat a large pizza and 5 scoops of ice cream. Now I do that. And if I didn't, I was like, I didn't eat that much today. I'd lose like 6 pounds in about 36 hours. Yeah. And you hit 30 years old, that just stops. So he's got to train differently. Mm-hmm. I think he has learned that. And again, it could have just been all of the other stuff that was going on. I didn't pay as much attention to my diet as I needed to. And I just think his ability, his quickness will be better. Is he ever going to be a 25-year-old Russell Wilson? No, but you can still be a hell of an athlete. Look at the basketball players, for goodness sakes, in your low 30s, mid 30s, and still have that explosion and be, again, as we were talking about the play action, the bootlegs and the escapability, all of those things should be a much better part of his arsenal this year than it was last year.
Yeah, and people are focusing on the actual weight loss and the literal physical difference in Russ, but I think the bigger point here is that Russ has shipped up into shape since Sean Payton came to town, and he's really doing whatever he can to be the better quarterback, that he can be and that he wasn't last year. So that's what's encouraging, Scott, is the Broncos finally have an adult in charge in Sean Payton, and everyone from Mr. Unlimited on down is following that lead. So
let's come back to that. And when I forget, because it'll go out of my mind and I'll lose my train of thought after I say hello to some folks in the chat, remind me, ship up into shape. That's the key word for me. Because Patrick comes in, he says, aloha, gents, from Hawaii. So things are moving along nicely. Much more interesting this season, that is for sure. Buck 'em all. Patrick, want to say thank you for everything you do for all of us at MHH, keeping us on our toes and well caffeinated at lioncoffee.com. Please
check them out, guys. It's good stuff.
Gary Palmer coming in orange, that Broncos orange, says, hey, Zach and Scott, everybody have a great Memorial weekend. Absolutely. I would love to sleep in tomorrow. We're going to be off tomorrow. No Broncos for breakfast. But who is never off is my 15-pound cat ninja who will wake me up at 6 a.m. no matter what I do the day before or what I have to do the night before. And if I shut the door on him, he's big enough he might knock the son of a bitch down. Pardon my language. So I not sleeping in anytime soon. But thanks, Gary. Now, you mentioned ship up, shape up, and you guys have talked about on the MHH pod the attitude, the buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps that you've got somebody who's been there and done that. The other part of that, Zach, is they hit rock bottom last year.
Right.
That team, with the expectations, they were embarrassed. We tried it this way. It failed miserably. Please come show us how to do this right. I firmly believe that there is 100% buy-in, not just because of who Sean Payton is, but because of what they went through last year and what they've gone through in previous years with a steady decline and then a rock bottom, that this is a full-on, you're seeing the results of the buy-in and the attitude difference from the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton. And I firmly believe, and I've said it since January, that Sean Payton was the right guy for this team.
100%. And I actually paused when I said that. I had to think about it. I wasn't sure if it was an actual expression or if I was kind of like merging two sayings into one.
Ship up or ship out?
Ship up into shape.
Shape.
I don't know if that's a real thing, but it worked in the context of the moment. And you're right. That's the point I was trying to make as well. The attitude, the culture change, the values that Sean Payton has instilled, it's already catching on. It's not going to take an entire season. It's not going to take until training camp or the preseason. Everyone is buying into that. And I wasn't worried about 89 other players on the offseason roster. I was worried about Russell Wilson. And that's why to see him come out there and look better and feel better and hopefully play better, it's so encouraging.
Yeah, it would be. It's so important for this team. The Russell Wilson playing well is the difference between being competitive now or being competitive in 2025.
Right.
Where you're bad in 2023 because your quarterback play is subpar and you have to make changes in 2024 to rebound.
Yeah. Then
you're starting to see the fruits of that in 2025. It's absolutely crucial. When we talk, Zach, we talk all the time about, the how to build the roster, building the Broncos. We've got to show all around it and the different things you can change. Lloyd Cushenberry this, or right tackle that. And who's the other safety? How come you guys don't talk about Russell Wilson up? Because you can't do anything with him for this year.
Right.
You can't. And if you do it next year, you're taking a $40 million dead cap hit for 2 years. So it's crucial for this team's competitive ability that he plays well. I'm not asking him to be an MVP. Just play well. That's not too much to ask, is it, for $50 million a year?
It's such a good point as well. We don't need him to be a top 5 quarterback. If he's top 12, the Broncos would be a playoff team. And you're right. That's the difference between being a playoff team and maybe like rebuilding for a year before hopefully being competitive again.
Phil comes in with some stars, and this is an interesting question, and I'll have a pretty strong opinion on this one, Zach. Good evening, Chad and Zach. Oh, that's Zach. I'm not quite Chad. If I do this and you can't see my hair, my forehead's big enough and shiny enough that I think I might fool you for a little bit.
Shot fired.
He says, was wondering if you guys think Jonathan Harris will be a starter this year. What are your thoughts on that, Zach?
It's kind of scary. I know you feel the same way. I'm kind of surprised the Broncos haven't brought in another veteran to kind of solidify that spot, but maybe they will. George Payton or Sean Payton talked about it this past week that they released McManus with the idea of chasing another player. Maybe that other player could be Shelby Harris, for example. It seems unlikely, but they need just another veteran, like a Cameron Fleming, for example, just a veteran that can kind of hold the fort, provide insurance, just so Jonathan Harris, of all people, doesn't end up starting next to Zack Allen.
For me, all I have to do is think back to that Buffalo Bills preseason game. And my initial takeaway from that game was, I don't want to see McTelvin Agim or Jonathan Harris on the field again.
Brutal.
Period.
Yeah.
Let alone as a starter. He may be put in some packages. Unless he's made leaps and bounds improvement, I don't see him as being a starter for this team. You slide Zack Allen inside. You signed, didn't they bring in a big defense, a 315-pound defensive tackle last week?
Oh, Lancaster, yeah.
Lancaster. You do something. Jonathan Harris, God bless him, wasn't good enough last year, and people improve. I've seen it with my own eyes. Ready to cut a guy 1 year and ready to give him $10 million the next. It's happened. But show me. I have to see that. Right now, I would think I don't want Jonathan Harris as a starter. I didn't want him as a number 2. I didn't want him on the field last year. Connor McLeod comes in. He said, I've been watching you guys for a couple of months. That's not creepy. And wanted to send a little appreciation. Russ does look a little leaner and meaner. No, I'm kidding, Connor. 100% joking. I appreciate the support that you guys have been watching. There's a lot of listeners after the fact with the Apple Pods and everywhere else. So, Connor, thanks for checking in and saying hello. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, and just thank you, Connor. And just to kind of emphasize the Jonathan Harris topic a little more, I'm looking at their depth chart right now, and they could probably use 2 defensive ends if we're speaking frankly here, because behind Harris is Matt Henningsen and Elijah Garcia. And behind Zach Allen is Awuzurike, Jordan Jackson, and I'm not going to even butcher the other guy on the depth chart, but they have bare bones there. So they need to at least sign one at the absolute minimum just so they have some meat on those bones.
Nick really brought that to my attention. I'm like, I don't know how we've glossed over it, talking so many other things. And maybe with the draft, we're thinking, all right, inside, we're talking inside linebackers, we're talking edge, 300+ pound defensive linemen, and the lack thereof is scary. And Connor, thanks again. I hope you know I was just teasing. Then within 2 days, they're signing a guy. It's a big need. Henningsen, okay for wasn't he undrafted, like an undrafted rookie, or was he?
I think he was a 6th round pick last year.
I couldn't remember if he was very, very, very late.
Yeah, he was.
No, he was. I think he was very late round pick.
He was 6th.
So he was okay for a 6th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to war with people who are having multiple first rounders on the defensive line, or against those guys. So I don't want good for a 6th round pick. I need good. DJ Jones is good. I don't care where he was picked. I don't care. He's good. Whatever it was picked, he's outplayed that. After that, on the interior, Mike Purcell does a job. I think he's okay. If I need to go out there in a 3-4, okay, in a big package. If I go 3-4 and I got DJ Jones, if he's flanked by DJ Jones and Zach Allen, okay, I'm okay with that. Where it starts getting scary is if I need to go 4-3. Then I got DJ Jones. I got Mike Purcell probably, but Jonathan Harris, Lancaster. That starts getting a little scary. And guess what? There is no position on the field rotated more heavily than your front 3 or 4 defensive linemen. You've got to have some depth. You're lucky if you get 60% of snaps from your ones. 65% of your snaps from your ones. You have to have depth. Have to.
You brought up Mike Purcell, and when they signed Lancaster, I was thinking of him because Lancaster is a prototypical nose tackle. I mean, he's 310 pounds. He's a run stuffer. That's Mike Purcell's job as well. He's not a great pass rusher, so I feel like they have 2 of the same player there. But I pulled it up while you were talking, Scott. There is a lot of talent on the open market when it comes to defensive ends. I mean, from Frank Clark to Robert Quinn, Ngakoue, Ioannidis, Akeem Hicks, William Golston, Carlos Dunlap. Like, there's a lot of players out there, and the Broncos just need one of those guys to provide some insurance, because you're right, especially in advanced Joseph system when the defensive linemen are tying up the linemen on almost every snap. I don't know that Jonathan Harris can do that, because like you pointed out in that preseason game, he was like a Lloyd Christianberry on defense, getting blown off the ball snap after snap. Yeah,
it was the other reaction was like, okay, the Bills just had 3 waves of offensive linemen that kicked your butts. Find out who they can't keep, and just be on the phone.
Saying that at the time.
Yeah, just find out who they can't keep. Just live on their waiver wire, and go that direction. And David McElrath talking, just bringing back the discussion about hitting rock bottom, and these guys are better than they played last year and are eager to be shown a better way to do things. He comes in green with his super chat. He says, Scott, I agree. Last year we had the talent, then injuries, then Hackett. chicken or the egg on some of that stuff. Guys who are challenged and where there's legit competition to win football games stay healthier. It's amazing. It's amazing what they'll play through.
Mm-hmm.
Those little knocks, you don't hear about them anymore when you're 9-3.
They don't hurt as
There's
bad.
a young kid who's a third of your money breathing down your neck for your starting position. These guys stay healthier that way. Otherwise, they're rats on a sinking ship. They're jumping. They're like, listen, we got contracts. We'll play it out. Try not to get hurt. I'm not going to play through our bumps and bruises, and we'll wait till the next guy comes in. But last year, what are you most looking forward to in a Sean Payton with a Sean Payton team, Zach? I mean, there's so much new, but a lot of the faces are going to be the same on the field. What are you looking forward to the most?
I mean, the lazy answer here is competency, just fielding a relevant, competent team that can go out there and get the snap off before the play clock runs out while the fans are chanting down. I mean, getting the punting unit out there or getting a kick returner out there. It's just the simple things, the fundamentals, the basics, Scott, that they've been failing on since Gary Kubiak was the head coach. But beyond that, obviously, his offensive prowess. You know, you mentioned Russell Wilson. While we always talk about Russell Wilson, well, this team goes as Russell Wilson goes, and they hired the perfect coach for Russell Wilson. It was the best thing that could have happened to him. So I'm looking forward to better offensive game planning, play calling, execution, and production. So
the record last year was, and I agree to a certain extent, because Russell Wilson, I have a hard time picturing him being as bad as he was last year. Last year was an aberration. You know, that's the thing that gets me when, we'd get our Seahawks fans or, trolls at a lot of times coming in. It's like, we told you he was declining. No. His worst year as a Seattle Seahawk, if you had gone down just a little bit from that, you would have had a chance at the playoffs last year. Yeah. This wasn't a declining. This was a declined at the door. You're not getting in. Declined. Do you have another card, sir? This one isn't working. You were declined. Like, done. And I don't think his trajectory is finished just yet. So he should be a little better. But you say they go only as far as Russell Wilson will take them. Even if he's just a shade better, this team should be knocking on the door of 500. So they should get better. But that's not really going far, is it? That's not going far. They need Russell Wilson to take them from a 9-8 team, an 8-9 team. If they're going to be 10, 11 wins, they need Russell Wilson to be good. Top 10. Not bottom 5. Not top 5. Give me 9 to 12. And I think you're really, really happy. We got some new faces that feels like coming in with some big time stars on Facebook. So I want to say hello to Joey. Joey Lee Baldwin says the Median League put the chip on Russell's shoulder. Got a feeling the league is about to buck around and find out. You remember, are you a Marvel fan at all?
Not really.
Okay. Well, there's a line there where, Loki, I think, says to Nick Fury, who's Samuel L. Jackson, he's like, you sound kind of desperate. He's like, you made me that way. You might not be glad that you did. There you go, Joey. They made him mad. Now come back the way Nick Fury does. Where's Jeremy Shawn? He always talks the movies with me. I can't slip one past him. You might not be glad that you did. That's what you're hoping for. You're hoping that Russell Wilson, not the smiley, always saying the right things guy you see in front of the camera. I want angry Russ on the field. I want pissed off Russ on Sundays.
I do know the Incredible Hulk, and you wouldn't like Russ when he's angry, so I feel like maybe we'll be getting that this year. I'll settle for that. But hopefully, Joey, Russell Wilson, his motivation, the chip, was put there internally. And I say that because we talked about his weight loss, and he did lose weight. And speaking as someone who's been on weight loss journeys, that motivation, it can't come from an outside source. It has to come from in here. So hopefully Russell Wilson looked himself in the mirror. I'm not even talking about his weight, but he watched the film last year. He saw how bad he was. You mentioned top 5, and he knows, or he should know, God willing, that he cannot be that bad again. So hopefully whatever motivation, whatever source of the motivation, the league will buck around and find out.
And Joey, thank you very much for the stars, my friend. I mentioned hitting rock bottom. I said as a team, but you really mean it again, it comes back to your quarterback. There's no way he could walk in there with an ego. I've been humbled. I failed miserably last year. We failed miserably last year, and I was miserable. You know, we talk about the money. How could you be miserable making all this money? Because these guys have pride and it's a profession, and you get used to the money. If you've been lucky enough to step up and like your first paycheck that you get when you go from an hourly to a salary and you get it and you feel like you're stealing something, people are going to look at me funny. Wow, I have like a $1,500 check. I've never had more than $200 in my life. You get used to that quick. The point is, Russell's been rich and famous for a long time. The money he's used to it. But the professional pride that these guys take and how they are going to be seen amongst their peers, that they have to walk in the locker room, it matters. It's going to matter. And there's no way he could be walking in there anything other than, I'm willing to do whatever it takes now, guys. Let me know. You, coach, tell me. I'm all yours. You ask me, I'll do it.
And I feel like Russell Wilson is the type that reads his own press clippings. I mean, for better or for worse. And if he does that, then he sees all the narratives that were being written. And a lot of them were BS. A lot of them were media driven and clowning on him for the sake of clowning on him. But when you call out his play, I'm a Russell Wilson fan. So is Chad. I mean, on this podcast, but we've called out his play. He was not good enough last year, far from it. So that's where hopefully that motivation stems from.
Lawrence comes in. He says, my son heard we needed a kicker and started practicing. Good for him. Now get out there and threaten him. That's how you build kickers. 50 push-ups if you miss this kick. 20 suicides if you miss.
Just don't Urban Meyer him.
Yeah, but get out there. That's how. The first time I kicked, that I went out, I was a soccer player. Like, I started kicking a ball around, and it's just natural. Like, hey, this guy can kick. I'm like, yeah, I can kick. The first time that I had to kick, or we ran for the whole team, I didn't know. I didn't know it. I just lined up and booted it through, and I was actually scared at everybody running at me. They were so happy. Yeah, the next time I knew it, flubbed it. Just absolutely flubbed the kick. I wanted to make it so bad for all my teammates. So get out there and put some pressure on him. You're going to run suicides if you miss this. That's the only way you get kickers going. They have to kick under pressure. Kicking a 40-yard field goal, 45, 50-yard field goal isn't that hard. Doing it when it matters, it's like a free throw. Making a free throw is not all that hard. Doing it when the game's on the line, that's really tough. 5-foot putts, sure. Piece of cake. Who can't do that? Yeah, do it when you're trying to win the Masters. So put some pressure on him.
Pretty good job if you can get it too. I mean, McManus was making $4 million a year to miss most of his kicks in clutch moments. So if he can, you can grow him up to be a kicker, Lawrence, I'd go for it.
So McManus has just signed. He is now back in the league with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And did you see this one yet, Zach?
I haven't seen the numbers yet. No.
Okay. Let me know what you think the number is.
Is it a 1-year deal?
1-year deal.
$3 million.
235. Which makes sense. That's about right.
Right.
That's not premium kicker money. That's average kicker money. What has he been in Denver? He's been pretty average.
Yep.
He hasn't been the McMoney that we've talked about. And if you could save $1 million, $2 million by moving on from McManus and replacing him. I'm a big baseball stats guy. I love the WAR number, which is wins against replacement. And it's basically how good is this person against an average player? Average replacement. His WAR would be a 0. It means he's about average. Well, I don't need to pay $3.5–4 million for an average kicker. I can do that for $1 million. So I think that is a good move. He'll like it down in Jacksonville. And good luck to you. And we'll see what the Denver Broncos end up doing. And he'll probably be sitting there watching and hoping that he misses every kick.
It might seem insignificant, Scott, but I would rather have McManus for 275 or whatever it was than for 4 million plus. I mean, that's a million plus in the NFL is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it just shows based on the contract he signed, it wasn't the media or fans thinking he was overpaid. Apparently the NFL thought he was overpaid as well. And when the Broncos sign their next kicker, probably this week, maybe Brett Maher, I guarantee he'll get a 1-year deal for about $2 million. So
About
it just shows they wanted to get younger.
About 2-3. It was 235 is what I read, and that's about right. And he was probably asked to have a restructure your contract, and he said no. You know, and I don't blame him. You've got that right. No,
Right.
I've got a contract. If you don't want me, waive me. I'll go somewhere else. Even if I don't make more money, at least I'll do it with my head high. I have no problem with that. Tyler comes in with the super chat. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Tyler.
He says, with Javonte being at OTAs with a brace on, do you think he'll be ready by week 1? I'll tell you this, Zach. I wouldn't bet against it now. I would not bet against it. I went from no way, no how to 50-50 at this point. Maybe even leaning towards yes. There's so much that has to happen right. Tyler, I say it all the time. It's not just your knee, and he was knee and other ligaments. It's the atrophy of other muscles that you don't get to use around your knee. I swear hamstrings follow knees like remoras on sharks. So when you hear about these setbacks, it could be muscular. But that he's out there and doing that and building that up, May, June, July, August, 3.5 months, 4 months before kickoff is awfully encouraging because he can do a lot of football-like activities in order to strengthen up everything else around him that is atrophied over the last 9 months in order to be ready for OTA. It's one of the most incredible stories that I can think of for sports this year is that he's out there at all right now.
It's the new Adrian Peterson, the fact that he's come back so quickly from that severe knee injury. Listen, seeing that video last week literally made me tear up. I was so happy for Javonte getting out there and doing some football work. But I will say this. There's a huge difference between getting on the field and taking one controlled, simulated carry versus being in a game and getting hit and having players actively target your knee. It happens. I'm sorry, but it does. And the other thing is the psychological aspect, Scott. You mentioned the other muscles and the atrophy. That's true too, but learning to or trusting to cut on that knee again and planting on that knee and not thinking about it, that might take a little time. The other thing is, I don't want the Broncos to rush him out there for the sake of rushing him. I don't want them to put him out there week 1 just to say, oh, look, he's back and he's such a great, remarkable story. He is already, but let him come back naturally. If that means in a worst case scenario, week 3, week 4, week 2, whatever, so be it. You have Samaje Perine.
Yeah, I don't expect him to be out there unless he's ready. And if he has a setback, so be it. Oh, will they rush him out there? No. Setbacks happen no matter what the timeline is. It just happens. And by God, when you do one, you're more likely to do another one. It's just the way it is. It's odds and probability and stuff. So to see him out there, I think is amazing. And Adrian Peterson is one of the, if not the one of the most physically gifted human beings of the last 20 years for what he's able to do. And Javonte can get back out there again. I think that would be absolutely incredible and great for the Broncos. And frankly, going back to buying in, what kind of example does that set for everybody else, Zach?
True.
When you're talking about this guy's out here who was away from football. Now he's here and he is just clawing and scratching for any chance to be back on the football field. What an example that sets for the rest of the Denver Broncos.
That is a great point. I don't feel like he would rehab that hard if it was Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. That Sean Payton effect is tangible, is legitimate. But my thing is, you might disagree. If Javonte is 99% good to go by week 1, I don't want him out there. Only and only if he's 100% do I want him playing week 1. Otherwise, he needs to get fully healthy.
I just don't think there's any way to tell what 100% actually is until you've been out there. I just don't there. You can do all the stress tests. You can do the flexibility tests. You can do the strength tests, and he can be 100% of all of those and something can still go wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'll rush him. I just don't think there's any way to tell what 100% actually is until you go out there and do it. I say you can't actually find out what you can do, like what's my max without failure. Like if you're doing a bench press, I don't know what my max is by what I can do. I know what it is by what I can't do. So if I think it's 200 and 205 comes back on my chest, well, I did 200. 200 is my max. You got to get out there and hopefully not fail. But you're not going to find out until you're out there and doing it. And he's got to pass everything that they know, which would be considered 100%. But there's still setbacks. it just worried. I'm worried. I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's a scary injury, y'all.
I think the bigger takeaway here is that Javonte will play this season. We don't know at what point, but the fact that he will be out there is an amazing achievement and accomplishment for him and for the Broncos offense.
I agree 100% on that one. I was thinking maybe we don't see him at all next year.
Yeah.
No, he'll be back. He'll be back. And, if it's week 6 and you're sitting at 4-2, great. What a boost. What a boost that'd be. If you're 1-9, you just shut him down. There's no reason to get back out there, dude. Michaela Parker coming in green. Happy Memorial Day weekend, folks. To you as well, Michaela. Thank you for everything you do for us at MHH. Had some more stars coming in. Phil apologizing with stars to me for, saying, Chad, Phil, we're good, man. He said, sorry, Deacon Scott, my mind said one thing and I typed another. There's just one of those, how many times do you expect to go one place and you just put it on autopilot and you turn right and you needed to go left? That's just autopilot. It gets worse as you get older.
Listen, I haven't called you Chad once this podcast so far, so at least I'm getting better in that regard.
But Phil asks, anyway, due to the lack of depth, does free agent Art Green make the team?
Maybe. I mean, it depends on how Jaquan McMillian, the Asang Bassies of the roster kind of turn out, but there's a reason why the Broncos gave him a fairly large bonus as a UDFA, and you put on his college tape, I feel like he fits this VJ defense perfectly. And Scott, I mean, they have, I think, 4 solid cornerbacks right now. In PS2, Damari Mathis, you have Riley Moss, and then you have K'Wan Williams. That's a good, quartet. But beyond them, it's pretty wide open. And this is a good path to, I don't know about playing time, but at least a roster spot or a practice squad spot for Art Green. I decently like his chances.
Okay. I don't know who that is. So I was hoping that you could grab onto that one. I think is he a running back, a free agent running back that came in?
Cornerback.
Okay. So I don't know. Appreciate you answering that one. Phil asks, I cannot understand McManus replacing a kicker with better stats. What happened to that kicker? Did they cut him? Did he get another? I don't follow kickers enough, unfortunately. I don't know what happened to the guy that Jacksonville had prior.
He was solid. He was better than McManus. Riley Patterson.
Then what happened to him?
He was traded to Detroit.
Okay.
Right before they signed McManus.
What'd you get? Because this gets back to Lawrence comes in with some stars and a question. He asks, are the Broncos running short on cash soon to be cutting for money? Lawrence, I've always said your contract, people, like, how many years are in his contract? It doesn't matter. Your contract is only good for as long as it is beneficial for the team to have you under that contract. As soon as you become more expensive than what they think you are worth based on your play, you're in jeopardy of being cut. It doesn't matter if you've got $60 million under the cap or if you are $5 million over the cap. And when you are paid as a top 5 or 6 kicker and you're playing in the average level and there's no dead money associated with your being cut, meaning there's no hamper and it's all upside, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. So old and expensive is no way to go. I know that one too. So it's not soon to be cutting for money. You're always cutting for money if a guy is not earning it. They're non-guaranteed contracts. So that's the way that one runs, Lawrence. And it doesn't really have anything to do with where you are or may not be against the salary cap, because it is somebody's money. You forget $2 million doesn't sound like a lot against a $250 million salary cap, but that's somebody's cash right out there. And I don't want to give it to somebody that ain't worth it.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins says hi, to this conversation. They cut him and they're eating like a $22 million salary cap number. If a team wants to move on from you, I think that's the point you were trying to make, Scott. They will move on from you. It doesn't really matter about this or that. It's a cold, hard business, but the Broncos are still about $10 million under the salary cap, and they can create some moves to make some more money. So, and with the Waltons, are they really going to ever be desperate for cash? I don't think so.
No, not cash, but what about salary cap money? And again, managing the salary cap is there's someone that has a job of that. And I'm always looking, hey, what can I do to give us more flexibility? Let's see. This guy has an $18 million contract and a $10 million dead cap hit. How's he playing? I can save $8 million by cutting Garrett Bowles or Justin Simmons. Oh, I don't want to get rid of Justin Simmons. He's playing really well. Hey, how's Garrett Bowles' knee coming along? I can save $8 million if he's not here next year. It's okay? All right. Hey, can someone get me Jason McManus in here, please? Jason, I did it again. That was my fraternity brother. I said that the other day. Hey, Jason, Brandon McManus. So it's not about the money. I mean, it's not about your lack of money. It's about business. George Fox comes and he says, great pod, guys. Thanks for making it easier to get past time until we get to preseason. And we'll do what you can. And thank you for being here. Speaking of which, we're a little over 40 minutes in. We'll probably hang around for a few more minutes. If you've got any last burning desires before we take off for Memorial Day, get them in here in the last few minutes and we'll see what we can get to you. Patrick Wiltsey also coming in with some stars. He sends us all the coffee and send us stars as well. Thank you, sir. And going back on that faith thing that I was talking about with Javonte Pookie, David says, trust in Pookie.
I do. I have all the faith in the world in Pookie, and I love how determined he is, but not even he can control, Scott, the recovery of those ligaments. It wasn't just an ACL. There were 3 major ligaments in his knee that were blown to shreds in that Raiders game. It was a career-threatening injury, quite frankly, and the fact that we're talking about him maybe back for week 1 is astonishing. I do trust in Pookie, but you have to follow the science as well here and play it smart. That's all I'm saying.
And Patrick said that Danny, his daughter, says aloha. I love aloha. You ever walk by somebody and you want to say hello and goodbye? Aloha. They wouldn't know what it means, but God, it just works. It's hi bye, aloha, hello and goodbye at the same time. I absolutely love it. Jesse, remind us we're only 15 weeks until kickoff. Wanted to bring this back to Russell Wilson real quick, just because I saw the storylines coming out of OTAs. One of the big ones with the Denver Broncos is Russell Wilson, and Sean Payton said he's looking good, looks sharp, very understated, but that's about the most positive. It's almost gushing compared to what we've heard so far. The Bleacher Report put together those as a compiling, and they said buy or sell. Do you believe it or do you not? And what do you think they said about Russell Wilson looking better and sharp and ready to go and is on the upswing for Russell Wilson? Buy or sell? You buying it or are you not?
For what they said, I'm going to take a wild guess and say sell.
They did say sell.
Shocker.
Which I think is fair. I think it's fair. And the thing is, it was not just sell. It was what they led off with. And they said, I'll drop this. I like to drop these links in. He says, it's going to be impossible to know if Wilson is really looking sharp until we see him in live game action. At 34 years old, Wilson is in the danger zone of regression. Peyton has no choice but to be as positive as possible. That's not true. Wilson's contract is an albatross with no clear outs until after 2025. After the disaster that was 2022, Wilson is going to have to prove it in games before any hype can be believed. I got no problem with that. Yeah, that's true. We want to believe. We want to think things are going to be better, but until we see it, we can't say for sure. We can't buy into it just yet. We can be hopeful, but I'm not placing any bets.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like PFF, though, they're biased. Even if Russell Wilson were to come back and look like the Russell Wilson of old, they still find a way to kind of detract what he's accomplishing and say, oh, well, they're doing this in spite of Russ, not because of Russ. But there's a modicum of truth to that. The Broncos have teased, whether it's a quarterback or just a whole team in general, for many years now in a row, and they haven't lived up to it. So I'm in that situation as well. That's why I'm not saying a 12, 13 win season. I think a 9 or 10 win prediction is a little more accurate. If they're more competitive, I'll amend that at the time, but show me. Don't just talk about it, be about it.
Yeah, we got to see it. I, I think there's going to be a rebound. Just how far?
Yeah.
He's not going to be as bad as he was last year. It's almost statistically impossible. But how good is the bounce back? How much rubber is Russell Wilson when he bounces? Is he a bowling ball and he just hits and kind of bounces, or is he going to super bounce back up on that timeline? Remains to be seen. Justin Thompson has a question here. He says, "Why you keep talking about Jonathan Harris?" Because that was the question. Why not our fourth rounder last year and Uwazurike? Well, there's a good question, Justin. What about Uwazurike? Do you think he can make the leap where he can become a good depth piece on that defensive line? Because last year he wasn't so much, and frankly, I didn't expect him to be that much last year. He's got an offensive tackle build, and I wish someone would have moved him to offensive tackle when he was 18 years old, but that's the scout in me. And playing with leverage is difficult to learn at this level. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But he's a big body, he's a decent athlete. Can he be counted on to be a decent depth piece where he can at least be an average second team DL, I'm sorry.
I think he could. And Justin, if you watch our podcast in the last couple months, I had a sneaking suspicion that Uwazurike maybe not develop into a Derek Wolfe, for example, or even a Shelby Harris, but like Scott was talking about, just a reliable backup where he can come in and do his job and you can count on him either as a run stuffer or a pass rusher. In this VJ system, it's so paramount. I just hope that the coaching is up to par on that side of the ball because there's a lot left to mine. He was very raw coming out of college, very unrefined, and they didn't give him that much seasoning last year. Hopefully this year with more playing time. I agree with what you said, Scott, earlier. You can't really know unless you're going out there and getting the reps and doing it. And that's how players grow and develop and progress. And I feel like for someone like Uwazurike, especially at that spot, you have to go out there and just get the reps and have some playing time.
Yeah, you learn by doing and getting out there and doing it. And for him, fortunately, there may not be anybody in his way for playing time. Yeah. When we talk about the depth, it's a little scary. This might be our last question before we get out of here, Zach. But Phil asks, do you think Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be our new Lindsey?
He has all the makeups. He's like a Philip Lindsay that can catch the ball reliably. He has the stature. He has the shiftiness. He has the overall skill set and like a plus version of Philip Lindsay. I hope he has the heart, though, of Philip Lindsay because that was one thing that was unmeasured on the field was his heart and love for the game. But McLaughlin, I think it's based on the way they're talking about him, Scott, based on the way he's looked so far at practice, I think he's almost like a shoo-in to be the number 4 running back or at least a practice squad stash.
Yeah, and I could know zero about Jaleel McLaughlin, and that's about what I know other than stats, and say he ain't going to come in and rush for back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So in that case, no, I don't think he's going to be your new Lindsey. Can he be a guy who can do a job, hold on to the ball, and add some explosiveness to the team? Yeah, he could be that guy. But, I don't expect the Cinderella boy coming in and getting, back-to-back 1,000. That was pretty crazy. Wow, Zach, we're at 50, and time has flown by here, but I think it's probably about time for you to get us on out of here.
Yes, sir. That was another terrific installment of the MHH Pod. If you want to follow us on Twitter, be sure you're doing so at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. Scott is at Scout Kennedy, myself at Kelberman NFL. If you guys haven't yet, go to mhhmerch.com and check out our Buckham inventory. So many other cool things on there if you haven't already looked. And facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Be sure you're liking that page and following that page. If you're on Instagram, go to Instagram at mile_high_huddle. Follow us there. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, be sure you're leaving your football priest and our Deacon Scott a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Want to say thank you to our super chatters today. David McElrath came in a couple times. Gary Palmer, Connor McLeod. That feels like oh yeah, it was a newer name, Connor. So thank you very much. Tyler, Michaela, thank you very much. And then on the Facebook side of things, we had Phil coming in multiple times. Joey Lee Baldwin also felt like a newer name to us. Lawrence coming in a few times. And George Fox and Patrick Wiltsey. So thank you so much to all of you. No Broncos for breakfast in the morning. I know you'll miss us. And Chad should be back tomorrow night, as far as I know. So everybody have a safe and happy Memorial Day, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Minor victories, Scott. Minor victories. Thank you for noticing, Phil. Have a great rest of your weekend, guys and gals. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.